Hey everyone, Marissa here and welcome back to another video. I know it's getting a little late in the month. You were probably like, she gave up already. I did not. I'm not giving up on the resolutions this year. Today, I thought we could do something fun for all of the organization nerds out there and just talk through all of the tools that I'm using to track my reading in 2025. These are also going to be the same tools that I used in 2024. So I've got what I think is a fairly good tracking routine down, if that makes sense. So I thought we could just kind of talk through those today. Hello friends, Marissa from the future popping in here with one housekeeping matter before we get into the actual video. I put up a post or a poll on my community tab asking what you guys would think if I changed the channel name, and I really appreciated all of the responses, but I think I realized that maybe I was being a little impulsive and I didn't think through the full implications of changing the channel name. I have a Gmail account attached to this. I have other platforms where I am Little Spider 9. So I'm gonna take all of the suggestions into consideration and take a step back and think about it a little bit longer. So if you did respond to the poll, thank you so very much. But I realized that I'm not sold on any of them 100%, and I think I need to think through the process a little bit more. So thanks again for your feedback, but for now I think we're gonna just maintain Little Spider 9. To get into the actual meat and potatoes of today's video, there are gonna be 3 tools that I'm using this year, the first of which is Storygraph. Now this probably isn't a surprise, especially if you watched my last video. I did use Storygraph's year-end book reading graphic things. There's a better name for that. I don't know exactly what they're called. But basically, Storygraph is just an alternative to Goodreads as a reading tracker. It is probably, I would say, the first solid alternative to Goodreads. I know there are others like Fable now, and I'm sure there are others that I'm not even aware of, but I think Storygraph was the first one to really eat into the Goodreads market. I would say in the terms of reading trackers, Storygraph is a relatively small business. It is Black owned, woman owned, and they do a fantastic job in creating a very for the user style platform, if that makes any sense. Storygraph does have all of the same basic features that Goodreads has. So you can search for books either by inputting an author or a title in the search bar, or you can use that handy dandy barcode scanner. That's actually relatively new, and I think they're still working on improving it. You can obviously review books. You can set up annual reading goals either by page or by book. You can host reading challenges, follow your friends, follow other bookish content creators. You can obviously host a TBR or a wish list. You can track your owned books. Wow, that was hard to say. I think the thing that really sets Storygraph apart though from Goodreads is just the fact that you can get so much more data out of it. They have a really intensive review system that you don't have to use the whole thing if you don't want to, but they have different tags by mood, genre, pace, whether something is plot or character driven, whether you want to add trigger warnings, if you want to add an actual starred review, you get the option to do not even just half stars. You can do 0.25 stars, which is how long have we been begging Goodreads for that? And not only do they do a really great job of categorizing books by genre or by general tag, you can also add in a lot of your own tags. And then what is the best part of Storygraph, and I think why it's probably called Storygraph, is that you get all of these graphs of your reading data. Now you can get this for the year. That's what I used in my last video. You can get these on a month by month basis. You can get them for I think you can compare multiple months. So if you wanted to see 2 graphs side by side, I think you can do that. Basically, if you're a data nerd, this is gonna be the reading tracking platform for you. I know a lot of people have already jumped over to Storygraph. This is not a new app. I think it's been around for at least a couple of years now, and it's definitely continuously improving, and they are really great at taking user feedback. But if you were interested in switching over in 2025 and you've been using Goodreads for say 10 years and you don't want to have to duplicate manually all of your data, you can actually import your Goodreads data into Storygraph. I have not done this myself, but I would assume it's by downloading a CSV file and then uploading that to Storygraph. But if somebody here has actually imported their Goodreads data and you kind of know the rough process, maybe leave us a comment, kind of describe how easy was it? Did it go well for you. I have been using Storygraph for, I want to say like 2 years prior to 2025. So this should be, I believe, my 3rd year, maybe my 2nd full year in the Storygraph ecosystem. And I personally find it a lot more user-friendly than Goodreads. I really like how detailed they are with their tagging system, their categorization system. I love that you can do the partial star rating because while I don't typically share star ratings here on the channel when I'm reviewing books, I do use them when I'm reviewing on Storygraph because I do find that I don't always like to do a full written review. It kind of helps you sway one way or the other, especially if you've got like a 3-star kind of middle of the road review. And honestly, I just really prefer the whole interface to Goodreads. I feel like Goodreads is really old school. It's kind of cluttered, it's very cluttered. And Storygraph is just like none of those things. It's really clean. Again, for how much data you can categorize things by, it is like a very simple interface and it's very intuitive to me in a way that Goodreads is not. The only criticism of Storygraph that I would have at this moment in time is that their barcode and search function I don't think is quite up to par. Like their catalog of books is not exactly the same as Goodreads, and that's primarily just because Goodreads can like feed off the Amazon algorithm or catalog, I guess. However, the team behind Storygraph is so very responsive to user feedback and they're continuously improving things and communicating with the community that I am fully confident in the fact that it will get to where I would like it to be eventually. And by eventually, I mean relatively soon. So that's Storygraph, the platform. Now, the way I am using it is a little different than how I used Goodreads in the past. It's primarily my data vehicle, if that makes any sense. So this is where I'm doing my deep hardcore categorizing. It's where I'm doing my star ratings. It's where I'm doing my tagging so that I can get like fun graphics and kind of like look at things like pace and mood and theme, like things I don't really track in my other 2 trackers. Things I'm not doing in Storygraph would be using like their TBR function. I have added a few things there just because they kind of like came across my feed and I was like, okay, wait, I want to save that before I forget, but I'm not really using it as like a catch-all TBR the way I used to on Goodreads. I'm also basically not using the social function of Storygraph at all, and I will talk about that in a little bit when I get to talking about Goodreads. Then of course, because I am a Notion girly, I do have a full book dashboard set up in my Notion. This is mainly where I am tracking like my owned library of books, whether those are unread or read, and where I am doing most of my like reviewing. I do wordless star reviews on Storygraph, but if I have any thoughts about a book, if I have any feelings, if I'm taking any notes on a book, I'm doing all that in my Notion. Why I decided to stop doing that publicly, I am not really sure. I think it comes down to the fact that if I have enough to say about a book where I feel compelled to share a public review, I'll just make a video here. But I also think that sometimes I'm not entirely sure what I felt about a book immediately after reading or even while I'm in the process of reading it. And so doing it in my own private Notion makes it feel a little bit less like official. And I actually thought it might make the most sense to just kind of like run you guys through my bookish dashboard. So we're going to do that right here. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about Goodreads. All right, here we are in Notion. I thought we could just do a quick screen recording. Though full disclosure, I am filming this sat in my closet, recording on just the laptop microphone because apparently all of my external microphones are now incredibly tinny. So apologies if the quality is not top tier, but I honestly don't think that's really what you guys are here for anyways. So moving on, we are in my book dashboard here in Notion. As you can see, this is just kind of a general page that hosts my book catalogs and then just some quick like currently reading information at a glance. I have also decked it out in all of the Studio Ghibli goodness. So this image here, this cover image is from Whisper of the Heart. And then down here we have Sho or Sean, depending on what dub you watched, from Arrietty. Because I just feel like this is what we're all aspiring to, right? Okay, so just kind of scrolling down the page, we have a currently reading section here that pulls automatically from my catalogs when I mark a book as kind of like in progress or being read. So this is all of the books that I own that I'm currently reading, and then this is a section from my library catalog, which would automatically pull any library books that I am currently reading if I was reading any, which I am not. I then also have a calendar view down here, which I don't use that often. Typically the things that get put on here, because this is for readathons and releases, are like Victober gets put on here, Nonfiction November gets put on here. Every so often, if there's an author I'm really excited about, I will put their pub date on here for their new release, but I really don't use this that much. This was mainly just because I wanted a place to track readathons and release dates that didn't clutter up my like actual day-to-day calendar, so I kind of created its own thing. Now let's go ahead and check out the owned catalog. So this is where I realized that I have a ton of unread books, though I am also realizing that this is not the most up to date. So I probably need to like schedule some time this year and do a little bit of a clear through, take things off that I have unhauled, and just make sure that like everything that I'm reading is on this list. Kind of what I'm doing right now is every time I pick up a book that I've already owned, like that I know I own, I will just check and see if it's actually on the list. And if it's not, I will add it. So when I said that I thought I owned 297 unread books, I was wrong. I actually own 273. So I guess that's slightly better. I'm not entirely sure, but basically this, in Notion, you can do different views for your databases. So this is the overall like default view for everything. Then I do obviously have a view for things I have read, things I have unread, and things that I once owned but unhauled. That's mainly just because I didn't want to delete them. I wanted to, sometimes I'll write a note as to why I unhauled them, but for the most part, I'm just marking them as unhauled. But I thought we could just look at a few different pages and you could see kind of my different formats here. So let's look at one I'm currently reading. This is Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow. This is the biography I'm currently listening to on audio. So as you can see, I'm tracking a few things here, and I do have different templates set up for nonfiction and fiction. So this is obviously a nonfiction template. I do have the title, the author, status. This I don't have number of pages, obviously, because it is an audiobook. And I really wanted to track when I acquired books so that I could see if there were certain years where I am purchasing a lot but not reading a lot. I have set up this template specifically for nonfiction. I don't think it's that different from fiction, if I'm being honest with you, but there were themes and takeaways. Right now I'm using this as kind of just like a general note-taking section for nonfiction, because sometimes you just have a few themes and takeaways, but like for a biography in particular, there's like a lot of different things that I find really fascinating. So I'm just kind of like jotting things down. And again, because it is software, it's not a notebook, I can just hit the toggle, hide all of that away. And then after I've completed the book, I will fill this section out. So things that I liked about the book, writing style, themes, content, etc., things I disliked about the book. And then because I have some kind of a reviewing platform, mainly my YouTube channel, I do have this section here that encourages me to reflect on whether or not I would actually recommend this book, because sometimes that differs from whether I liked it or not. And sometimes I would recommend the book even if I disliked it, but it would just be to a very specific kind of reader. So I do have that section there. I then also have a author bio and a quote section, which honestly I very rarely use. Most of the time when I'm reading nonfiction, I'm just like bullet pointing things and themes and takeaways. But I have this section just in case there's anything particular that I wanted to write down. Also, I really, really rarely fill out this author bio section, though I think I'm going to try and do that more this year. Here's a good example of a fiction, or I guess this is technically poetry, but of a not nonfiction book and how I fill that out. So here I have a poetry collection, How to Love the Empty Air by Kristen O'Keefe Aptowitz. I read this in 2023 and really enjoyed it. Again, I'm tracking
very similar things here, but I have a few different categories down here. So rather than just themes and takeaways, I also included a character list so that I can list out any important characters that I might need for reviewing or just that I would like to remember. Again, likes and dislikes, would I recommend this book? And again, quotes and author bio. Again, did not fill those out. That is the owned dashboard or the owned catalog. I don't really use the long form all of that much. I really mostly just come in here, update status, and then use the currently reading from my dashboard, which again automatically pull up here once I've marked them as currently reading. Then I do have the library catalog. This is basically the same. The only difference would be that I have marked whether I returned unread, if they were never read, or if I did read them, just because I am a chronic checker-outer and not reader, if that makes any sense. So sometimes it will take me a couple of times checking out a book to read the book, and sometimes I just won't ever read it. Then in the reading goals and stats page, this is brand new as of this year. I just thought it would be fun to have a place to track my non-numerical reading goals. So this is kind of the goals that I shared in my reading goals video. I think just want to keep them here. And then because they're in a toggle, what I did for last year is I just collapsed it down here. I didn't actually complete any of my non-numerical reading goals in 2024. Then this is just a little widget so I can up or down. Right now I'm sitting at one book. I'm currently reading a bunch, so hopefully we get to that. And then I just wanted to track were they owned books? Were they new books? Were they books I borrowed from the library? And I can kind of do that all here. Again, very simple. Then the last page I just want to briefly show you guys is my presidential biography challenge. Now this is actually a live web page. So I've listed this before. I will list this again in the description box in case you would like to see, but I spent an absurd amount of time putting this all together. This is basically a catalog, obviously, of all of the presidents of the United States through current, shock horror. And I'm not going to be listing that much here. Let's pop this open. So I'm currently working on George Washington. I am debating as to whether I will add notes here. Aside from these key categories, I am listing out the different books that I'm reading for each president, and then I think I'll probably put a few things in here. I'm not sure if there will be additional notes as the project goes on, if I will find a need for additional notes, but right now this is what it's looking like. Basically just a little catalog of the reading I've done, and then a few basic notes here, just so that at the end of the challenge, I can always refer back to this as a good resource, like a quick glance resource, if you will, because realistically, I will not remember everything that I take in. I will maybe remember some of it, but I probably won't remember as much in depth as I would like. So that is the Notion dashboard. One thing I forgot to add about Owned is that, like I said, it is not super up to date, so I do need to go through and update it. And I realized just very recently, as in 2 days ago, that I don't think I've tracked any of my manga on Owned. So that Owned number, that total number, not accurate. I would love to actually track everything someday and get an accurate count of just how many books I do actually own. But as of right now, I'm fairly confident that it is higher than this number.
Okay, so that was my book dashboard in Notion. And now there's only one last thing to talk about. And that would be whether or not I'm still using Goodreads. And the answer there is yes and no. I think I started using Goodreads back in maybe 2013 when I was still doing my lit degree. I had a friend who was really into bookish tech stuff and he put me onto it. So yes, I'm still using Goodreads in that I still have all of the stuff that I have already put on there. I'm not taking that off. I'm not closing the account. And I am also maintaining-ish the TBR list specifically, because again, I just find their barcode scanner to be a little bit better than Storygraph's at the moment. I will scan things into my Goodreads TBR when, say, I'm like walking around a random bookshop, walking around a Barnes & Noble, and I'm trying not to like say buy the book right now, but I don't want to completely forget about it. I will scan it onto my Goodreads TBR and then just remember to like sort by newest added if I'm kind of trying to see what I added on there most recently. But beyond that, I'm really not using Goodreads anymore because I find the interface just so clunky and cluttered. I don't like that it is continuously trying to integrate with my Kindle. I don't like that that things auto sort by like the oldest possible item. Like, why would I want to see in the year 2025, would I want to see a book that I added to my TBR in 2013 first? I just feel like the platform is like a bunch of ads for books that I'm not necessarily looking for. And while I used to really like the social aspect of Goodreads, I, at this moment in time, just find it like incredibly overwhelming. And now part of that is my fault. Back in the day when BookTube was a far smaller community and book blogging was more of a thing, one of the ways you could encourage publishers to send you ARCs was to show that you had like a pretty active written review presence, whether that was on your own blog or whether that was on Goodreads. Those seemed to be like the two methods that worked the best for me. But I also thought it probably looked better if I had like a better follower count. So I would just kind of accept whoever friend requested me, follow requested me, whatever it's called. And I just find that when I go on there now, it's kind of like my Facebook feed in that I'm sure I knew all these people at one point, but like, who are you? Why are you reading that? How did we, this sounds ungrateful. I'm incredibly grateful for everybody who wanted to follow along with my reading stats and activity on Goodreads, but like now with some distance, I can't find the actual people I would be interested in following. I also just think that I am trying to step back from like algorithmic feeds this year, if that makes any sense. So if there is somebody who I particularly trust when it comes to their book reviews, or who I know I tend to read similarly to, I'm just gonna go straight to their Goodreads profile or to their YouTube channel, or to, if they have a Substack, to their Substack, or to their Bookstagram account. I don't dabble in book talk. Don't hate me. The only people I follow on Book Talk are Books on Tomes, Thoughts on Tomes. I can't remember her username. And my name is Marinez. Beyond that, that is my toe in the water of Book Talk. I don't dabble otherwise. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but I am trying with most social platforms this year to use them a little bit more like search engines and a little bit less just as information feeds, because I find that my brain is overwhelmed. I am getting a lot of information and not all of it's quality, and not all of it is stuff I actually care to be informed about. So fortunately or unfortunately, I haven't decided yet. The year has still only just begun. Bookish platforms have also fallen into this category. So I think I'm literally following 3 people on Storygraph, and I'm not engaging basically with Goodreads at all anymore. All right, well, I feel like that kind of ended on a bit of a rant, but you know what? That's just where my brain is at these days. Those are the tools that I'm going to be using this year to track my reading and kind of catalog my bookish thoughts. And I would be really curious to find out what platforms you guys are on. Are you still using Goodreads? Have you made the jump to Storygraph? Has anybody tried out Fable? Is there anything else that I'm missing? Alternatively, have you taken your bookish tracking offline altogether? Like, are you keeping a reading journal maybe, or like one of those cool journals where people cut out little what do you call them, cover art images, and then like, you know, just give a few brief thoughts? Otherwise, thank you so very much for watching. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Why was that such an awkward ending? Good gosh.